But there are two worlds. There is a physical reality, which we see and perceive through the 5 physical senses. And there is a metaphysical reality, or beyond physical reality. Now, at its most fundamental building blocks, we have the universe as we know is made up of 2 things. Matter, which is made up of atoms or particles, and waves. Correct. So we have waves and we have atoms. So here's a wave. And the old model of the atom is the fact you have something in the middle called a nucleus. And then there is something called an electron that buzzes around the outside like the moon orbiting the Earth. Correct? That's kind of the prevailing model. And here we have, an electron that's buzzing around. Now that isn't true. We now know that that doesn't actually exist. What exists is the fact that this electron doesn't orbit like a moon and a planet, or the sun and a planet. Instead, it appears in a specific location. Anybody know what that specific location is? Anywhere. That's not very specific. Where you look at it. And this was one of the greatest discoveries of the 20th century. In the 90s, called the observer effect. And what was noticed was that the electron would appear in any place in this sphere called a field of possibility, or a field of potentiality, whichever name that you want to call it, depending on what book you read. And just to give it some size context here, if this was the size of a pea, a garden pea, on your plate, the outer edge of where the electron could appear in that field of possibility would be probably the outer edge of Wembley Stadium if the pea was on the center of the field. Now, understanding that level of context, how many different places could that electron appear? Bearing in mind it's a lot smaller even than the pea. Quite a few, would you agree? In other words, probably infinite. If you have an XY graph, how many places can you place an X? Infinite. Unlimited level of possibility. So there is an unlimited level of possibility as to where this electron can show up. Where does it show up? Well, guess what? It shows up where the observer of that experiment intends it to show up. Bloody interesting, if you ask me. What I mean by that is that if the observer intends it to appear here, that's where it appears. When the observer is not looking, does anybody know what happens? It reverts back into a wave. Famous double slit experiment. So when you're not looking at reality, when you are not observing it into reality, into existence, and where your reality shows up is linked to your intention as to where it shows, then it reverts back into a metaphysical state. Everything in the physical world has its genesis, begins life in the metaphysical world. Understand? So everything starts as a wave. Now, when we go back to some of the things I said earlier, it tends to make sense. Everything in the physical world is subject to the law of impermanence. I don't care, say, if it's a body, a tree, a building, a planet, the sun. Nothing in the physical world lasts forever. There's a constant birth, death, annihilation, creation process that's going on at the subatomic level all the time. You ask quantum physicists, they'll tell you. We have particles popping in and out of existence into a vacuum, and they have no understanding why. Now again, if you look at the fact that we have a wave, and when we observe the wave, it collapses, what's called collapsing the waveform, it collapses into a particle based upon our intention. Now, does that not in itself validate at a micro level, a link between thoughts and circumstantial reality? 100%. Now, what do you mean you just intend? How do you intend? Well, very simple. What is intention? I've got news for you. We don't know. You see, the closest we can get is a label. That's what the left brain likes. You're going to learn a lot about labels before you leave tonight. So if I wanted to raise my arm, and what actually raises my arm? What is the actual thing or process that raises my arm, do you think? Okay? Tension, muscles, heart, soul, brain. See, neural impulses. So there's many different answers. See, most scientists would say that what raises the arm is an electrical impulse generated by the cerebral, which travels down through the automated nervous system, into, through the spine, down the arm, and boom, the muscles react to that input. Other people say, well, it's the thought of the arm that raises the arm. But if I'm thinking of raising my arm, does it raise? Thinking about it right now? No. Oh, so it must be the electrical impulse. No, that's simply what happens after the fact. What links the thought to the action? Well, at that point, science is pretty silent because it doesn't know. Not traditional science. The closest we can come to that answer is a label we call intention. We intend. Intention is the link. Now, what is intention? It's kind of a concentrated level of will, pushed into some level of action. But it's a bridge between the thought and the movement. Would you agree? Now, when we intend anything, we have an impact on reality that can be measured under a microscope. Observer effect. That's at a micro level. At a macro level, we have what's called reality. And now you can hear some of the great philosophers. William James, father of modern psychology, said towards the end of his life, he was asked the question, what has been the greatest discovery in your lifetime? And without a second's hesitation, he answered, a person can change his life, the circumstances of his life, by changing the attitudes of his mind. In other words, you think certain thoughts, you will create certain circumstances linked to that. We now know that in physics. It's what mysticism has been talking about all along. It's what the New Age people have been talking about all along. Science now validates that for those people that are more left brain dominant. Right brain people knew that and didn't need the proof. So if we know that the primary pattern of the universe is this, we can start to understand things at a different level. Here's where we get a little interesting. If we know that everything exists first as a wave and then as a particle, and a particle has a finite lifespan, but it's affected by the consciousness of the observer looking at that particle. Does a tree fall in the forest if nobody's there? No, it doesn't, as we actually find out. But that creates a duality of life, physical, metaphysical. We as human beings are the encapsulation of the physical and metaphysical in this experience we call life, are we not? Do we have a physical body? Absolutely. But do we also experience stuff that is metaphysical? How about dreams? Dreams are metaphysical. Can we put them in a bag and sell them? No, not at all. Can we touch them, smell them, see them? No. But we experience them, do we not? Are they real? Absolutely. They're generated out of some level of consciousness beyond the physical. So if we start to understand that there is a physical and there is a metaphysical, and the metaphysical is the area, if you like, that gives birth to the physical. Every particle begins as a wave, not the other way around.